Today I will be talking about intrusive negative thoughts, and also during this video I will give you two simple exercises that you can practice to help you to stop being overwhelmed with those intrusive thoughts. And also, just to let you know, this video, it is a continuation from where I left last week when I talk about avoiding emotions. So today, firstly, I will explain you terms such as fusion and diffusions, which are derived from acceptance and commitment therapy, which in short we called ACT. And this type of therapy is actually very widely used to treat low mood or anxiety. Starting with fusion, it is when we become enmeshed with our thoughts, and in this state it's very difficult to judge and see things objectively. So if we're going to take an example of someone who maybe just failed an exam or maybe some project, and they will have this thought, I'm a failure. But then there will be obviously many more similar thoughts, such as I'm a failure, I will never succeed, I'm embarrassment maybe to my family, to my parents. And then you will take these thoughts as a final conclusion, as the truth. So in this moment, it might be really hard for you to think that you've actually passed all other exams and you only failed this one specific, and still you have another chance at passing this failed exam. And fusion happens in situations like this when we take the reality as the ultimate truth, as the only reality. What's also problematic about being in that state of fusion with your intrusive negative thoughts, it is that we're not only listening to those thoughts, but we also start behaving accordingly to them. So if we believe that we are a failure, then we might give up on all the projects, we might never challenge ourselves, we might never go that extra mile to develop our skills and our abilities. When we are in a state of fusion with our intrusive negative thought, what might happen as well is that we're gonna start reading into the meaning of those intrusive thoughts. So it might be something such as, if I have these intrusive thoughts, it means I'm a bad person. If I have this intrusive thought, it means I have a criminal mind. Or it might mean that I'm just a crazy person. And the problem with all these negative intrusive thoughts is that when we take them seriously, when we entertain them, when we dwell on them, when we start reading into the meaning of those thoughts, then we also start feeling certain emotional response towards them, because our thoughts, they produce our emotions. So then as a result of those thoughts, we're gonna start feeling low mood, anxiety, shame, guilt. So now, on the other hand, diffusion, it is a state in which we don't allow those self-critical and self-limiting thoughts to impact how we feel emotionally and also impact our behavior. I hope that now you have better understanding of what fusion and diffusion are in context of negative thoughts. And now we will do a very simple exercise to demonstrate you how powerful these concepts are. Now I would like you to choose one thought or belief that you have about yourself. So it could be something like, I'm a failure, I'm a bad friend. So just choose one that you think resonates with you the most, one that maybe bothers you the most. I hope you have it now. And now try to hold this belief, this thought in your mind for a few seconds until you're gonna start feeling its emotional impact on you. Yes, I hope you have it. Now in the next part of this exercise, we're gonna add a line in front of the belief that you have chosen. So it could be something like, I'm again having the negative thought that I'm a terrible friend. And again, hold it in your mind for a few seconds. In the third part of this exercise, I would like you to add even longer phrase in front of your intrusive negative thought. So it could be something like, I just realized that I'm again having this negative intrusive thought, I'm a bad friend. And again, hold it in your mind for a few seconds and see what emotional impact it has on you. I hope you pay attention, and I hope you've noticed a difference, because what we hope is to notice actually decrease of those negative emotions that you feel every time you add a longer and longer phrase in front of your intrusive negative thought. And obviously it might not happen when you're trying it for the first time. It might not also happen with every intrusive thought that you're gonna introduce in this exercise. So it is about you actually having a go and trying maybe different intrusive thoughts, maybe trying different introduction phrases in front, and see how it's gonna go. As I always say, when it comes to mental health, it is about practice and perseverance. When next time you're gonna notice that your intrusive negative thoughts are creeping in, and it could be something like, I hate my life, I'm a failure, I can't trust anyone, then it is actually helpful to start working on actually creating this distance between you and your thoughts, because that then allows you to actually see things, your reality, your surroundings, yourself, other people in more objective way. By learning how to diffuse from our thoughts, we also learn how not to believe in every single thing that passes through our mind. We learn how not to obey our intrusive thoughts as if they were the ultimate truth. When we practice diffusion from our intrusive thoughts, even when we're using the simple exercise, it doesn't mean that we actually gonna stop having intrusive thoughts. It means that we might not notice them as much and we might not pay much attention to them. It means that they will not have as much impact on how we feel emotionally and how we behave. And also, just to give you some background to why we experience those intrusive negative thoughts, is that we all human beings actually experience intrusive negative thoughts every single day. And when I say intrusive negative thoughts, I mean thoughts that we haven't evoked purposely, thoughts that are evoked voluntarily, and thoughts that are triggering in us some negative emotions such as shame, guilt, maybe frustration, some sort of stress. You don't have to be diagnosed with anxiety or depression, and you still will be experiencing a few thousands of those intrusive negative thoughts throughout the day. You might be surprised, but actually majority of our intrusive thoughts will have some negative content to them. From evolutionary perspective, we can see that perhaps our mind is just trying to protect us from potential danger, from being embarrassed, from being exposed, from being vulnerable. And in some situations, we can agree that those intrusive thoughts, they can actually prevent you from certain harm. But when those intrusive thoughts, they become your default way of thinking about yourself, your surroundings, and then also when those intrusive thoughts, then they encourage certain behaviors that maybe are not as good for you, that's problematic. So it would take an example of maybe you having intrusive thoughts about yourself not being good enough, and that then leads you to feeling really uncomfortable when you are around people. That then might lead you as well to not wanting to work with people, so you start working remotely. But then as time passes, you start feeling really lonely, and then that leads you to actually being depressed. And this is when we will actually know that your intrusive negative thoughts are not protecting you, but are actually harming you. So as I said before, we all experience intrusive negative thoughts, but day to day we might not pay much attention to them, we might not entertain them, they're just there passing by, and that's it really. But at some point in our life, something might happen, some event that is really upsetting to us, and at this time we might actually start paying more attention to certain intrusive thoughts. So we might start listening to them, we might start arguing with them, we might start looking into the meaning of those thoughts. And even later, when our circumstances might have changed, we might actually, things actually got better now, but those intrusive thoughts, they might actually persevere, they might stick around for a bit longer. And this is when the diffusion can actually be very helpful. I'm sure that if you are someone who's struggling with intrusive negative thoughts, you've tried different methods. So maybe you've tried arguing with them, you try getting rid of them, you try pushing them away, maybe ignoring them, blocking them. And the reason why these methods potentially might not be working for you, it is that when, for instance, we try to push them away, we create resistance, and then there's a risk that those thoughts actually can come back even stronger. when we try to argue with our intrusive thoughts, there is a risk that we might be defeated because there might be actually a logic in this intrusive thought. But the bigger problem here is that when we try to argue with them, when we try to ignore them, when we try to push them away, we actually giving them more importance. We acknowledging them. We almost invite them, we make them a reality. And this is when the problem with fusion starts. On the other hand, with the methods of diffusion, we don't argue with our intrusive thoughts. We don't resist them. We don't push them away. We only acknowledge that the thought is there. And that's it. We don't attach any judgments to them. Another very simple way of how you can start approaching your intrusive thoughts, it is about organizing them with labels. So you might have intrusive thoughts that are to do with your self-criticism. And then you might just label story about self-criticism. Then you might have intrusive thoughts about maybe external criticism or maybe fear of being judged by people. So again, you put a label on that story about being judged by people. So simply you group your negative intrusive thoughts into stories and then you label them as you wish. And if you don't want to become too overwhelmed with this exercise, you might want to just start with one story. So if, for instance, if you're struggling the most with the negative intrusive thoughts that are to do with your self-criticism, then you might just create a self-criticism story. And whenever you're gonna notice those intrusive thoughts popping into your mind, and again, you put the label that, again, I'm noticing the story of self-criticism, for instance. In situations like this, you don't argue with your story, you don't make any judgments, you don't try to push it away, you only acknowledge that this is the story A or B or C. And then you focus your attention, your energy on whatever it is valuable to you. And creating distance between you and those intrusive thoughts gives you the opportunity to actually see the situation more objectively. When dealing with intrusive negative thoughts, while using these diffusion methods, whether it's the first one that I gave you or the second one, you're actually increasing your confidence that you know what you're dealing with, because you know you've named it, you've labeled it. You've also created the distance between you and those intrusive thoughts, so you are in control. And by doing all that, the power dynamics between you and those intrusive thoughts actually shifts, so you are not anymore a passive victim of them. And as I said before, in order for you to actually notice a permanent change in how you deal with your intrusive thoughts, you're gonna have to practice those methods of diffusion regularly every single day. But the good news is that with the right practice, with the perseverance, you're gonna actually see a long-term change when you're gonna actually have space in your mind to focus on things that actually are important and valuable to you. And I guess that many of you at the moment will have these intrusive thoughts about this is not going to work, this is another stupid idea, I've tried so many different methods and nothing works, so how this could actually help me. And this is where I would actually stop you and maybe call this story as a pessimistic story and just let it be. Let it flow, let it come and go without actually judging it, without attaching any strong emotions to it. Or you could use the other method that we've tried initially in this video, where you would introduce your intrusive thought. So it could be something like, I'm noticing that I'm experiencing the thought about this is not going to work again. I'm again experiencing the intrusive negative thought that normally is preventing me from starting projects, and it goes like, it is not going to work. And again, you just let it be. You don't attach any emotions to it, any judgments, and the thought just comes and goes. In situations like this, when we work with intrusive negative thought, we might have this concern, but what if the thought is important? And by ignoring, we're gonna miss something really important, right? But how you can gauge this is by actually assessing whether the thought is helpful to you or not. So not whether it is important or not, but whether it is helpful. But this is actually a topic for a whole another video, so if you are interested in hearing more about it, then just let me know about it in a comment section. I believe that many of our low moods and anxieties can actually be dealt with those very simple self-help materials. But if you are someone who's struggling with low mood or anxiety for a very long time and you've tried different methods and it seems like nothing is really helping you, it might be really important then to actually go to your GP or your family doctor and ask them for an advice. Thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this video then please like it, subscribe, and I'm gonna see you in the next one then. Thank you. Bye bye.